Even though you'll find Alcatraz in the island, this isn't your typical island escape. Today, we'll look at Alcatraz East Crime Museum and learn more about its shadowy depths. Welcome to Bear Facts, where we explore the Smoky Mountains one bear fact at a time. Today, we're diving into a museum experience that's a bit darker than your average Smoky Mountain attraction, Alcatraz East in Pigeon Forge. While this place might bear the infamous Alcatraz name, it's not quite the rock prison we know from San Francisco. Instead, Alcatraz East is a true crime lover's dream come to life, filled with history, notorious criminals, and artifacts that bring their story to life. Located right in the heart of the island off of Highway 441, this museum is easy to find, but what you discover inside is far from ordinary. Alcatraz East brings the intrigue of Americans' criminal history to the Smoky Mountains. First thing first, let's talk tickets. The standard entry gives you access to over 100 interactive exhibits, but you can also upgrade your experience by adding activities like becoming a detective, taking part in laser tag, or even getting an audio tour to dive deeper into each exhibit. Kids aren't left out either. There's a shooting gallery and other fun add-ons to keep them entertained throughout the tour. The base ticket price is $28.95, and you will find discounts for children, seniors, military, and Sevier County residents. There are always coupons if you look online or find a discount booklet. I know the island has a few, but I just went online and used that one. And you can also order your tickets ahead online, though you won't get any discounts that way. There are two things I want to mention before we head into the museum. First, they do not allow food or beverage. There are lockers that you can use if you need to store them, but the staff is pretty firm about it. The second thing is that live photography, video photography, is not allowed. Because of this rule, most of this video is made from still photos. I wanted to respect the proprietor's rules, plus the owner is a lawyer, so I wasn't going to mess with that. Though I will try to make it fun and interesting. Now, on to the good stuff. Alcatraz East is laid out over 2 floors. There's actually 3. You'll start at the top and work your way down, following a winding path through the grim and fascinating history of crime. The lobby sets the scene by putting you in the center of Alcatraz. The real Alcatraz is located on a small island in San Francisco Bay. It's one of the most famous prisons in the world. Originally, it was used as a military fort in 1850s and later became a military prison in 1907. However, it's most well known for its role as a federal penitentiary from 1934 to 1963, housing some of the most notorious criminals in American history. Nicknamed The Rock, Alcatraz was designed to hold prisoners who caused trouble at their prisons. By 1963, the prison was closed due to high operational costs and deteriorating infrastructure. If you ever have a chance to see the real prison, it's a fascinating experience. What many people might not know is that Alcatraz is now maintained and operated by the National State Parks, making it a true sister to the Smoky Mountains. Being as Alcatraz is from a well-known symbol for crime and punishment, it makes sense that the museum in Pigeon Forge would use them as their main theme. However, unlike the Titanic Museum on the other side of Pigeon Forge, Alcatraz East doesn't really focus on the original Alcatraz. Instead, this is a crime museum. There is no affiliation or connection to the original prison. The original Alcatraz Island and its associated name do not have a trademark that restricts its use for educational or thematic purposes. Alcatraz is a national landmark managed by the U.S. National Park Service, which typically doesn't prevent private entities from referencing or theming around it as long as there's no misleading associations or false claims of affiliation, which Alcatraz East doesn't do. The museum opened in 2016, but it wasn't the first crime museum that owner John Morgan was involved with. Morgan, an attorney, owner of Wonderworks, and a real estate developer, had a similar museum in Washington, D.C. in the early 2000s. But due to sky-high rent rates, like $1 million a year, and other legal issues, they closed their doors and began looking for a better place. They found it here in Pigeon Forge. John Morgan brought in Jasmine Vicario to be the chief operating officer. The two took what they started in DC and expanded the museum to the location in Pigeon Forge. Vicario seemed to be the true creative and the drive behind the museum. The museum has 3 floors. You'll start your journey at the top floor and wander your way down to the basement. As you ascend, you'll explore the evolution of crime, starting as far back as the Middle Ages, where justice was brutal and criminals faced some hard punishments. Artifacts from this time period show just how much society has changed in dealing with crime. Though this part of human history is quite expansive, the museum doesn't really focus on it as thoroughly as they cover the history of crime in America. From there, you'll move on to the Wild West. The Outlaws of the West are covered in its own gallery. By using artifacts and informational posters, you'll learn more about the infamous figures like Doc Holliday, Jesse James, and Butch Cassidy. You'll see actual items from these criminals, like Pancho Villa's death mask, and learn about their lawless lives. There is a small part of the museum that delves into Prohibition, where alcohol made moonshining into a crime. It would have been a crime all of its own if the museum didn't cover Prohibition, as this era had a huge impact in Tennessee, and many of the locals in the Smokies partook in illicit moonshining activities. Moonshiners and gunslingers of the West make way for machine guns and gangsters of the East. The museum takes a darker turn as it explores the 1920s and the rise of organized crime. This was the time when the real Alcatraz became more famous for housing some of the most dangerous gangsters. You'll see weapons and artifacts from this area, including machine guns that became infamous tools of the trade. Things get even more intense as the museum delves into the serial killers, sociopaths, and psychopaths. You'll learn about criminals like Jeffrey Dahmer, whose glasses and handcuffs are on display, as well as an Afghan owned by the original Black Widow, Judy Buenano, whose crocheted blanket from death row is also shown with her prison number. I'm not sure how the museum was able to get as many of these artifacts, but it's eerie to walk around and see such things as Charles Manson's guitar, intimate objects used or known by these nefarious criminals in history. But the museum isn't all about the criminals. Alcatraz East pays tribute to the victims, like Etten Petz, whose disappearance led to the use of milk cartons to spread the word about missing children. The museum also talks about the Amber Alert system and other cold cases that have haunted communities for decades. These exhibits are followed by ones on murder of mass destruction or killing, the sniper weapon used by Charles Whitman used on the student campus, the Boston Marathon artifacts, and even other items from the Unabomber are held on display. There is even a 9/11 memorial and theater show. The museum does an excellent job of setting the tone as you enter, letting you explore the history of crime and look at the kinds of crimes people commit. By the time you're halfway through, you begin to feel hopeless and question humanity. And I think this was on purpose, because as you get closer to the end of the museum, they start talking about how criminals are brought to justice, giving you a glimmer of hope that not all is lost. Though I'm not a huge crime history buff, I've always thought I had a pretty informed about the history of criminology, but there are a few things that really surprised me, gaps in knowledge that I didn't even realize I had. One such thing was about John Walsh. I think because I was pretty young when the hit show America's Most Wanted first aired, I never really thought about the history of the show. It aired from 1988 until 2012 and was always just there. But the museum gives you a glimpse into the creation of the show and how the tragic murder of John Walsh's own son spurred him to campaign for better methods to help recover lost children and find criminals. The show takes credit for over 1,100 criminals being arrested, which is a staggering number. The museum moves on to talk about how technology has played a huge role in criminology. You'll explore how modern technology helps law enforcement catch criminals. There is a crime scene replica where you can test your detective skills, and a forensic lab where you can see how actual autopsies and crime scene investigations work. You even get to walk through a lineup and experience what it's like to be on both sides of the glass. There is a substantial section of the museum devoted to the law and rights of criminals, and a full-scaled courtroom gives visitors a chance to stand on, well, the stand, or put themselves in the role of a judge, which his job is to be an impartial extension of the law, charged with dispensing justice, even if the verdict is one that they don't agree with, as was felt by Judge Bevelyn Perry when he learned that the parents of Kaylee Anthony was given a non-guilty plea. The small backpack and teddy bears of the murdered child are on display, a reminder that justice isn't always fair. Once you pass judgment, now you get to see how justice is dealt out. From incarceration and prison time to capital punishment and death row. What would your last meal be if you had to choose? How criminals learn to cope with their incarceration, and what it feels like to be in a cell. The very last part of your journey through the criminal world is at the lower level. Here, you'll find a temporary exhibit. When we went, we could see the infamous cars from history, such as O.J. Simpson's white Bronco, Ted Bundy's Volkswagen, and even Bonnie and Clyde's bullet-riddled Ford V8. It's a wild ride through the vehicles that have become part of Americans' criminal past. And of course, no museum visit is complete without a stop at the souvenir shop. From crime-themed merchandise to mementos from your visit, you'll find plenty to remember your tour. So is Alcatraz East worth the cost and time? That depends on what you find entertaining. If you're an amateur sleuth or fascinated with crime, you might really like it. But this is still a museum. There are well-designed displays, fascinating artifacts, and lots of engrossing facts. But you need to do a lot of reading. And though you can get an audio tour, the tour still doesn't cover everything. And this might not be a place to bring your young children. As you walk through the museum, they try to keep the younger audience engaged with large mock displays and photo opportunities, but it isn't a place where kids are encouraged to run and play. This is a museum, though with a dark twist, and many young children just won't understand what they're looking at. While Alcatraz East might not let you capture your experience on film, it's a museum that stays with you long after you leave. It's both chilling and fascinating, a true window into the dark side of history that's hard to forget. I hope this video helped you learn more about the Smoky Mountains or helped you plan your next trip. You're getting an honest review from our personal experiences, but facts and things change, so please keep us in the loop if you learn anything new and want to share your experiences in the comments. Thanks again for visiting us at Fairfax of the Smoky Mountains. Please click that like button and subscribe to our channel.